and my goal is to explain my creative process using photography. And today's date is April 5th, 2012. Okay, hello, my name is Lawrence Odom, and I'm going to be telling you about my photography. I want to begin by telling you how I first was exposed to photography. As a child growing up, I always saw my grandfather carrying around cameras, and he never left the house without a camera. So my earliest memories as a child with my grandfather was him and his camera, and he really used photography as like a social documentary form. He just documented the world around him, the people that he came in contact with, and aside from using it as that form, he also loved nature and he loved photographing nature. So quite often he would sit in his backyard, and he had this really amazing, intricate garden, and he would sit out there for hours waiting for bees to fly down onto these sunflowers that he had, and he had these huge sunflowers in his backyard. So he would wait, and as the bee was hovering over the sunflower, he would take the photograph. And he also loved photographing lightning, and that's probably some of the most interesting work that he ever did. He would go out at night when the storms were rolling into Orlando. That's where I'm from, Orlando. And he would set up his camera on the tripod, and he would wait for hours for these storms to roll in. And as he's sitting there with the camera on the tripod, he would use the bulb setting. And for those of you who don't know much about photography, the bulb setting on the camera allows the shutter to stay open. Mm-hmm. And you can think of the shutter as the eyelid. So the eyelid's always closed, and when you push the camera to take the button, when you push the button to take the photograph, the eyelid opens and closes, allowing light to come in, which exposes the photograph. So at night, if you leave the shutter open, there's no light around, so it's not exposing anything. So he would wait, and then as soon as a lightning bolt would strike, then he would let go of the button, and it would close the shutter, and it would expose the lightning, all the streaks of the lightning, and it looked like veins, and there's really amazing photographs that he took. He actually had some of those photographs published in a book, a Florida photography book. So that's how I was introduced to it, and it wasn't until my late teens when I actually got a camera and started photographing, and I really wasn't serious about it until about 22 years old. I took my first photography class in college, which was a 35 millimeter film class, black and white film class. And that class also had a darkroom component. So for me, I really loved going into the darkroom and being in there and printing my images. It was a very personal connection with buying the film, loading it in your camera, shooting it, developing the negatives, taking the negatives and making prints out of them. And darkroom is really an art form in itself. It's a very meticulous process of getting the image the way you want it to look. Also, during that class, I had my first chance to shoot a series. And I shot a series titled Down the Backstreets. And that series was inspired by an old hip-hop song by this guy named Guru. The name of the song was Down the Backstreets. And Guru did a series of CDs called Jazzmatazz, and he would recruit all these jazz artists, these jazz musicians, and they would play jazz music as he would rap over the music. And it was really just interesting fusion between jazz and hip-hop, and I love jazz. My grandfather was an avid jazz listener, so it just kind of fit in with that whole photography vibe, and even the vibe of the song is very New York vibe to it, and that's kind of what I wanted to go with that series, just that grungy, dirty, griminess of New York City. And being from Florida, Orlando's no New York, so I tried to capture that essence. I would walk around downtown, I'd put in my iPod, and I'd listen to that song, and I would go to the alleyways and take all these photographs of the alleyways and just the really behind-the-scenes stuff and the dirt and grime of the city. And so that was my first exposure to doing a series, and I liked that series. I liked the photographs that I came up with, but really during that time when I was first starting out, overall I didn't really like the quality of my work. The photographers that I looked up to and that I admired, my work wasn't like theirs, and I just didn't know why. I didn't know, what do I need to do to become that person who takes those kind of photographs. And I was just feeling kind of discouraged during that time of maybe I'm not going to be able to become a photographer, or maybe I just don't have that eye and that skill. But I kept going along, and eventually I got interested in shooting digital, so I bought a digital camera. I spent about $1,300 on my digital setup and started shooting digital, but honestly, I just kind of stopped photographing once I got a digital camera. I kind of lost connection with my camera. With film, it's such a this precise process of you only have 36 frames, and you need to really choose the image, precisely. You don't want to just shoot anything. You want to make sure what you're going to shoot is going to be a photograph that you like. But with digital, you can just click away for hours, and it doesn't really matter. So I had my digital camera for a little bit, but because I took such a long hiatus with taking photographs, I just got fed up with it. I gave my digital camera to my mother, and I picked up my film camera again and started shooting with my film camera, and that's strictly what I use. I only shoot with film cameras. I have 8 film cameras. I have a few 35mm cameras, a medium format camera, and a Polaroid camera. And eventually I want to get into shooting large format, but it's very expensive, and I'm just not, can't afford that right now. But eventually I will start shooting large format. And I kind of want to go back into, really, film, the aesthetic of film is what I like. That it's a very emotional look to it, and I like the grain, if that's what I'm going for in my photograph, and I just really like the whole feel of film. And going back to talking about that feeling discouraged, recently, about 6 months ago, I heard a interview with a man named Ira Glass, and he's a writer, and he's talking about his creative process and doing creative work, and he says that many people get into doing creative work because they are a creative person, and they like other creative people, and they like their work. So they decide to get into doing creative work, but when they're first starting out, they go through a long stretch of time where they aren't producing the work that matches their taste. And he says that many people feel that. They go through that phase of not liking their work, and they just quit, and they give up because they don't feel like they can do it. But he said the only way to get past that phase is to do a lot of work. And by producing a large volume of work, eventually you'll close the gap between your work and your taste. And eventually your work will match your taste, and your work will match your ambitions. So I really wish that I had heard that back then when I was going through that time of not really liking my work. But even now when I hear it, I've gone through that period of not liking my work, and I like my work now. I like the images that I come up with, and hearing that it inspires me to keep going and challenge myself and to tackle new topics and just keep growing as an artist. So that kind of segues into my work, what I like to shoot. I like to shoot both color and black and white photography. I kind of think of it as having 2 sets of eyes, and I have a set of eyes I use when I'm shooting color, looking for specific colors and things that you can capture with color photography. And then when I'm shooting black and white, I put on my black and white eyes, and I'm looking for different things when I'm shooting. Really, I enjoy shooting people. I mainly photograph my friends, and I'm very intrigued by human emotions, and I feel like a lot of human emotion is subtle, and it's hidden behind the eyes, and in photography I find that I can capture that, and that's really what I like. Another avenue of photography that I like is called skate lifestyle photography. Skateboarding is a huge part of my life. Most of my friends are skateboarders. Some of them are on their way to becoming professional skateboarders. So I'm really privy to like a niche culture, and I like to capture that essence of that culture. I'm sure many of you have seen photographs of skateboarders doing tricks on rails or down stairs or ledges, but you don't really see, this guy's been trying this trick for an hour or maybe an hour and a half over and over again, and finally he lands it, and then he lays down on the ground sweaty and exhausted, but feeling accomplished that he landed this trick. And that's an image that I like to capture, and that's that skateboarding lifestyle, that skateboarding culture that many people don't see. It's the behind-the-scenes look at what goes on in skateboarding. So I really like to shoot that. And aside from that, I like to tackle topics that are controversial or taboo. A series I'm working on right now is to tackle gender roles and sexual orientation. Um, Gender roles being a man and a woman, and a man is supposed to act like a man, and a woman is supposed to act like a woman, you know, in society's view. And sexual orientation being, oh, you're straight, okay, so that's fine, that's normal, but you're gay, so that's not normal, and I don't like that. You know? And to me, I disagree with those. I don't care about what a man's supposed to do or what a woman's supposed to do, or if someone's lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgendered, black, white. It doesn't matter to me. People are people no matter what, period. And so I want to take those out of context with my photographs. So I like to shoot, you know, people who have a very androgynous look that you can't really tell if it's a man or a woman. And the reason I do that is when I go to show these photographs, the person will come up and view the photograph, and either that person will be a person like myself who will see a photograph and see this beautiful image of, you know, an artistic expression, or there'll be a person who comes up and they're disgusted by it and they don't like it and they shun it and they just walk away. Or maybe it's a person who comes up and they're viewing this photograph, and as they're viewing it, it sparks some sort of questioning inside them, like, is that a man? Or, I mean, I'd feel okay if that was a man, that's a good photograph, but if that was a woman, I think that would feel weird, or vice versa. And that kind of questioning is my way of turning the tables on the viewer, of getting them to question themselves. Maybe they never realized that they thought that before, and by seeing this photograph, they really get this sense of, wow, what kind of person am I? Why do I feel that way? Why does that matter to me? Because art is art, and it's beautiful, and it doesn't matter what it is. You know, a creative person is going to appreciate creative things no matter what they are. And I think that if society didn't force so many of their opinions on us, that we should act a certain way or be a certain way or live a certain way, and if people were just more generally open-minded, then, you know, accepting pieces of art like that would happen more often. So that's really where I like to go with my photography. Those are the kind of things I'm trying to tackle right now in my life, and the things that interest me and my opinions. Aside from that, yeah, I'll tackle something else as soon as it comes to me, and music plays a big part of my creative process. You know, often I listen to music and an image pops in my head, and that it ignites an idea of going either from a series or just an image by itself. And so I love to listen to music to get inspiration. And other than that, just to kind of wrap it up, if I can do a conclusion, it's just that if you're a person who's listening to this and you're interested in doing creative work, or maybe you're already doing creative work, and maybe you're in that period where you're in that phase where you don't really like your work, you know, my advice is to just keep going and keep learning and trying to progress and try new things and search yourself and find those things that really inspire you and make you want to photograph those things. And if you're the person who's wanting to get into it, take a class, or maybe you have a friend that's into it and you can ask them questions or ask advice or tag along with them if they're going to photograph or paint or whatever it is that they do for creativity. I would say just be motivated and just go for it and create art and have fun.